I have to pee, but I'm going to hold it until after the podcast.
Me too. Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Will.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Norm.
Hey.
Welcome back, guys.
Wow.
Yes, I mean, I guess for regular listeners,
Nothing's changed.
nothing's changed. It's just another week. But I have been gone into the other side of the world, the far side of the world, for the last 31 days.
So like New York?
Australia, New Zealand.
Wow.
We toured the Behind the Myths tour to Sydney, Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Auckland.
These sound like made up places.
And they are all amazing cities, actually. Because Australia is so spread out and far apart, we weren't taking a bus this time on this tour. We were performing like every fourth or fifth day, which is giving the trucks enough time to drive the 1,200 miles.
Oh, my goodness.
It takes to get to where we are.
So how many shows over how many days?
I think we did like 14 over 31 days.
Okay. When you tour the U.S., it's like every day or every other day.
Yeah.
Well,
So when I tour this fall, when Jamie and I tour this fall, I think it'll be 26 cities in 32 days or something like that.
Wow.
That'll be, we work 6-day weeks. It's actually, the rhythm ends up feeling great.
Well, because you just do a show and then you get on the bus, go to sleep, and wake up the next morning, you're in a new town, right?
Right. And like I did last year, forcing myself to get out every day and see something and photograph it and write about it was a really important practice. And I know I didn't do that a lot in Australia, and I'm sorry for the lack of updates, but this and perhaps another subsequent podcast should serve as a kind of a review of how it went, and I'll have some pictures to support it.
Okay, so first things first.
Yeah.
How many deadly animals over the 32 days did you see? I mean, that's what everybody asks.
Encounter.
Yes. Did you see any drop bears?
I got fooled by the drop bear in my first interview.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sad.
I didn't know about a drop bear.
Oh, yeah.
What's a drop bear?
Drop bears, you got to watch out. They fall into your car, and they're deadly animals.
It's literally like a snipe. It's an
goodness.
Australian ribbing of the tourists.
Wow.
And so I did this morning zoo show, and he's like, "How many drop bears?" and blah blah blah. And I was like, "I don't know how many I don't know how big drop bears are." And he's like, "Oh my god, I fooled Adam Savage into thinking they was drop bears." Now I realize I'm doing a Kiwi accent there. I'm sorry, I got all mixed up with my accents while I was down under. There you go. There's an orca.
You just got to chew the vowels and the consonants in the back of the mouth there.
And then in Australia, there are distinct accents in each part of the country.
Well, of course, everywhere there's distinct accents.
Yeah, no, I know.
We just don't hear them because we're,
we really don't
savages.
Hear them, but boy, they're unique all over the place. It's quite fascinating.
When you sent the trucks, this is a weird question. When you sent one of the things that always blew me away about Australia is they do 3 and 4 deep tractor trailers through like the central part of the country.
Right.
And I like that is I know that it's a big, then there's lots of empty and there's not much traffic, I assume. But an 18-wheeler with 4 trailers on it seems just reckless and wild and out of control.
Except that there's almost nobody on those roads, from what I understand. And the distance between gas stations is so great that passenger cars pretty much don't make the trip because you have to bring extra fuel.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
You're driving just between cities?
No.
Or
If
from
you're
across the
driving
middle?
across the middle of Australia through the
Sounds like a good challenge.
through the deserted part, you actually
We should
have
go
to
do
bring
that.
Wow.
extra fuel.
I keep turning Norms up thinking it's me. Was that you?
Let me say from the get-go that, and I told the Australians I would keep their secret, but I'm blowing it right now. Australia is a beautiful country.
Of course, it has to be, right?
I was not prepared for how beautiful it actually was. And look, we live in San Francisco. It is a gorgeous city. And we think of it as like a city on the water because the water is part of every view and the bridges are part of the lore and the physical layout of the city. But not like Australian cities are part of the water. They are deeply in and of the water with little ferries that run everywhere and waterways and houses running. It's like Sausalito everywhere. The density of San Francisco, but it looks like Sausalito.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
so everyone
in every city.
On the water. Brisbane is beautiful. Melbourne is gorgeous. I mean, everyone knows Sydney, which is also magnificent and incredibly varied. Like San Francisco, there's a million different places and microclimates and stuff. And the people were ridiculously friendly. Like I look, I don't know. Maybe it's just going to a country with like healthcare and reasonable minimum wage, but everyone's is so nice, and there's just I don't know. I didn't hear a car horn for the entire time I was there.
But how did they let the other people know that they were driving poorly?
It was a really a great grand tour of Australia.
So let's do chronological.
Yeah.
What was the first city you went in? What did you do in that city?
So
I think you did a show there, Norm.
actually, no.
Oh,
I landed.
wait.
We landed in Sydney, where the rest of the crew went off to was Melbourne, or I'm having trouble remembering the order, but. Oh, that's the shop next door.
Your next door neighbor has a
There's a
table
cabinet
saw, it
shop.
sounds like. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's could be routing, I think.
Oh, yeah.
At any rate, we flew into Sydney a few days early, my wife and I, to get over jet lag and to see one of our best friends, Alice, who lives in Sydney. And we hung out with her as much as she could stand us. We kind of like, do you have plans today? Great. Do you have plans tonight? Great. Do you have plans tomorrow? And so she took us around to some great stuff. She took us to the hipster neighborhood in Sydney called Newtown.
Okay.
And there's a beautiful Camperdown Cemetery. I wrote about that in the blog post. And then we did a bunch of press, a full day of press. And then that night we went off to Melbourne, I believe. And in Melbourne, we did our first performance of the show. And interestingly enough, the Australian crowds are a little quieter, I think, than American crowds.
Like more respectful. They don't know when to cheer or how loud to cheer.
It's not respectful, and not to say that they were disrespectful. It's just I think it's less of a thing to yell at a concert.
Huh.
You know, it's like, oh, you know, we're here at a concert, and so we're going to watch it.
Right.
There's a notable thing in the U.S. You know. You get a lot on stage by talking about the city you're in. People love it in the U.S. when you talk about their city.
Hello, San Francisco.
I mean, it's a great way of bringing the audience closer. They love that discussion. Australia, that's not really, you know, sure, yeah.
They
you are
don't
in
have
Sydney.
a real sense of pride about the place that they live.
I don't
or,
think it's a lack of sense of pride, but perhaps just a different way of expressing it.
or maybe just a resistance to cheap tags.
Cheap audience pandering,
Yeah.
sure. Also, surprisingly, the New Zealand audiences were louder than the Australian audiences.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they have
think of
long
Kiwis
musical
as a-
history, and you know.
I think of Kiwis as being more restrained, but apparently not from the stage.
Wow.
How
So
about that?
Fair enough.
MythBusters the idea originated from Australia. So
It is. It's
the,
produced out of Beyond Productions in Sydney.
the response of the fan reaction and your interactions with the audience, what is that like?
On that front, it was great. It was a good portion of every audience knew that we were an Australian show, and we talked about that at every performance, that we consider the show's sense of humor to be deeply Australian in that Anglo-Saxon taking the piss way.
Mm-hmm.
So after Melbourne, I think, how did it work? I think Melbourne, then Adelaide, then Perth, then Brisbane. But I could be wrong about that order.
We're not going to judge you. There's not a
Okay,
quiz.
don't judge me. It
No,
was a
it's fine.
long trip.
Yeah, it's been a while too since that
Yes.
leg of the trip. So
Also, Thing 1 and Thing 2 came with us for the first 2 weeks of the trip,
your children.
my children. And then we sent them back on their own.
Wait, what? You sent them international? Did they have to?
Wow.
Did they connect through whole America or through like Singapore or
No,
something?
they flew from Sydney to L.A.
Oh, okay.
They went through customs in L.A. and then got in a plane and flew to San Francisco.
Did you? What
They could have
instructions?
dropped off in LA, and that's it. That's the last you could have seen of them.
No, but okay.
Become celebrities of their own.
Thing 2 knew enough to pull Kevin Mitnick's business card out of his wallet before going through customs in L.A.
Okay, that's good. So
For those uninitiated, Kevin Mitnick's
yeah.
business card is a set of lockpicks,
Yeah.
laser etched into stainless steel.
So we were on a flight this morning my wife and I were on a flight with our daughter this morning from Portland, and saw a friend on the plane. He was like, "Hey, I'm going to tell you something that's going to really destroy your world." And he was like, "One day she's going to get on a plane without you." Oh man, you are a bad person. So what did you tell them before? Is this the first time they've flown I mean, I know they've flown
It's the first time they've flown
unsupervised
internationally
before.
alone, but they have flown by themselves many
Okay.
times. I'm actually kind of astonished how much they have flown
When did you start that? I mean, I don't mean to get into like parenting business.
When
here,
did I
but-
start flying them alone? I think the first time they flew by themselves, they flew up to Seattle to see their maternal grandmother, Noni.
And
It
was this
might have been 9.
both together?
Yeah,
Okay, so they at least were a team.
they were a team.
2 brains working instead of just one. That
Thing
seems
two
like
did
good.
not like it. He doesn't like the takeoff. He didn't like the takeoff.
Okay, but he had flown before.
He had flown before. Oh yeah, they've been flying since they were 6 months
Yeah, I
old.
gotta imagine.
But this flying alone on Southwest from San Francisco to Seattle, that was intense for them.
So did you make sure that they knew not to make jokes going through customs or to talk about the drugs that they'd ingested or
on
any of
this
that
trip?
stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. They already know. No
Okay.
joking. No nothing.
It's not a funny
It's
place.
liberating, I'll tell you, to fly for the first couple times on your own.
Oh, actually, the time that got me was, see, when they fly alone when they're younger, the airlines have a whole system in place.
Yeah, the unaccompanied minor.
Yeah, and
process.
you go to the gate and you wait while the plane taxis and takes off. You as a parent or the guardian has to stay there, and then someone meets them at the gate and walks them all the way to you. It's this whole process.
Like there's
and it's
signing and ID checking and all sorts of
It's
stuff.
very gate to gate, and it's very thorough.
If you have to transfer, they take you I did this as a child. They took me to a little room someplace
Right.
where they had cartoons and like 15 different age kids, and we had to wait in limbo. And then when it was time to go board the plane, we went back to the gate, and when we were on the next plane,
Airports
so-
don't lose children.
maybe even sometimes, but you think you'd hear it on the news if they did.
Well, so at a certain age, they start to get old enough to fly by themselves, depending on the airline. And for some, it's 13, for some, it's 14, and for some, it's not until 15.
And it's also depending on the kid too, right? I mean, like
It depends on
it depends on your feeling about your child,
absolutely.
right?
Of course, it depends
Yeah.
on your parents' feeling about their kids'
Yeah.
ability to manage going to the airport. But when Thing One had to go to do something, I can't even remember what he had to do. Oh, he was going away for a meditation camp. He does a meditation camp a couple times a year.
Okay.
And it was the first time he was flying an airline in which I didn't need to escort him to the gate. So I just drove him to the airport and we walked to security and I watched him go through by himself. I got all choked up because it was like, there he goes.
You stayed until he's through the metal detector, picks up his bag,
I'm like
turns around and
yelling,
waves.
57B.
Well, and there's multiple stages of that too. Like a direct flight to Seattle, where you don't have to make a big change in a huge multi-terminal airport, is a completely different thing than like flying through Chicago or
Dallas.
Atlanta or even Dallas.
Chicago or LAX.
Yeah.
Transferring between airlines
Yeah.
and LAX, if you're not on the same airline, dude, that can be a while.
I went to
Heathrow.
oh Jesus.
Or as I refer to it, children of men.
What is it, Amsterdam?
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to Australia.
So back to Australia. It was funny. We spent 2 weeks with them, Mrs. Don't Try This and I, with the Thing One and Thing Two. And of course, because you're traveling with your kids, you yell at them all the time because they're
Yeah.
screwing up and their hotel room smells like boy sweat and dirty
I
clothes.
can only imagine.
Oh, it's a horror show. We actually wouldn't let them have their room cleaned.
Wow.
Because it's wrong to do that to a hotel
Well, fair
cleaning
enough.
person.
I mean,
To have to step into that room full of boy sweat and Doritos ground into the carpet. So what we did was for each hotel stay, I think they stayed at 3 different hotels. They had to clean their room at the end, reasonable enough so that it could be clean, and then we left a nice tip for the cleaning lady.
okay, fair enough. I mean, that works.
Look, it's also, we're trying to inculcate them with a value of like, people do this.
Yeah.
You can't just go to a hotel and like drop
Yes.
your clothes everywhere and then someone else. I don't think it's right I personally don't think it's right for a 15-year-old to go to a hotel where it's like, yeah, I can do whatever the fuck I want because someone's going to clean it
Right.
up. Nope.
Look at, you'll never believe what I use these washcloths for.
I don't even.
It's the
That's
Upworthy
the other
headline,
reason, right?
Yeah.
That's what the tip
No,
is
no,
for.
no, I wasn't okay. Oh my god. Oh wow. I
Oh, the
apologize in
places you will
advance.
go. So then Julie and I did a couple of, my wife, I know I said Mrs. Don't Try This. Julie and I did a couple of hikes while we were in Australia. When we were in Perth, we got sort of stir crazy at hotel living. It's a very hard way to travel because it's almost like a vacation because you're only working every 5th day, but it's not quite because you're working every really 3rd day because there's press to do and there's travel days and there's a lot of stuff going on.
Stuff going on back home. And
Right. And so when we landed in Perth, we were both kind of like crazy. So we drove down south. We drove down south of Perth to a cape called Cape Naturaliste. It's about 3 hours south, and we stayed at this beautiful lodge owned by the Pullman Group hotel company. And we set out in the morning from the lodge on a thing called the Cape to Cape walk. Now, the total walk is 158 kilometers. We did 15 kilometers.
Okay.
Which is a lot, actually.
That's a long walk, yeah.
It was just under 10 miles, and we were beat at the end of the day. We stopped at a hotel called The Caves, which was absolutely gorgeous. And then we caught the taxi. So we caught the taxi back to our hotel, and
now that grammar joke's gone.
Spent a nice night there, and then drove back to Perth the next morning. And it was a lovely way to we love road trips. We love driving, even if it's on the other side of the road.
That's a fun adjustment if you're not used to it.
It is. I've actually gotten pretty good at it. We did some traveling in Scotland a couple of years ago. The only problem I have is that the roads are so tiny.
They're narrow.
I've never been to Australia. Like no shoulders, or like the lanes are
no,
small?
There's lots of shoulders, but the lanes are narrow.
Oh, wow.
Small cars, too.
Small cars, but it's also really rough on the passenger.
Oh, because I'm sure
as
you're
the driver.
yeah.
When you're hugging the middle lane, it's your inclination to kind of be able to see the line, but that puts the driver into the verge, as it were.
Yeah. Oh.
So we both, as passengers, were like, gnashing our teeth and freaking out. There was a lot of that. And then the second hike we did was in Auckland. We took the ferry over to Waiheke Island, which is a beautiful, beautiful island, about a 30-minute ferry ride, and with a gorgeous hike. A bunch of gorgeous hikes. It's a really big island. We only got this one 4-mile loop done. But we were, how does this work? We were 3/4 of the way done with the loop, and we were thinking, well, we can go to the town, which will be another hour and a half before we get back to the ferry, or we could just head back overland. And I could head back overland, and it's 1 hour back to the ferry. And then Julia looks at her watch and she says, when will the ferry get here? And I said, it leaves in exactly 31 minutes. And she's like, I think we can make it. I'm like, back to the ferry. So we get back early. And she's like, come on. And by the time we decided, it was 28 minutes.
So you made a 1 hour walk in 28 minutes?
Uh-huh.
Oh my God.
We
done.
ran. It was such a thing. So it was this thing where we
Cross-country running
over a hill where we see the ferry coming into the harbor, and we're
my
running
God.
along the path.
That's some amazing race.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
totally awesome.
You need a Mark Burnett score for that.
It's
And, just
true.
boom, boom, boom.
Where's Phil Kogan?
Of the reality shows,
Yes.
that would be the one I would want to do.
Yes. No,
Seems
it's
like a good
fantastic
time.
show, and he's a wonderful, wonderful host and producer.
He seems like a charming man all
He
around.
is. I've spent an afternoon with him once.
Oh, cool.
With him, Padma Lakshmi, and Heidi Klum.
Was this?
Oh, I remember this. Yes. Yeah.
I was doing some Emmy press in LA a couple of years
Oh,
ago.
that's really funny.
That's right.
Very strange group.
Reality show.
All very, very intelligent, super smart people. Just not a group I ever expected myself to find
It's like
chatting with in a green room for an hour and a half.
Heidi Klum, Adam Savage, Phil Kogan, and Padma Lakshmi are in a boat. Guess what happens next? I've been reading a lot of Upworthy while I was gone. No,
right.
I'm kidding. Okay, so a couple of hikes, couple of good hikes.
Couple of good hikes, lots of good driving. Oh, driving, yes. So I buried the lead. In New Zealand, I wrote to my good friend Greg Broadmoor, who's an amazing designer of the Dr. Groardboard steam comic books.
What a
Uh,
Love those.
And
They made gun. They made actual props that you can
guns
buy.
and
They've been in video
They have
games.
jackets, and they have their video games and stuff. And Greg is an amazing designer, also designed all the weapons from District 9.
yes.
I'm a big fan, and he's become a good friend over the years. And I wrote to him and said, I'm coming. Can I come see Weta? And he said, absolutely, or absolutely. That was a terrible keyword.
Never been more jealous and ashamed
It
simultaneously.
gets worse. So I also know Richard Taylor a bit, and I'd seen him at Comic-Con this year and told him I was coming down, and he said, "That's excellent. We'll be there, so come on down." And Richard and Greg walked me through dozens of shops with hundreds of people working on every imaginable thing. I met Peter the Master Sword Maker. I met I saw all these sets from Minas Tirith, all several sizes and boats, the Venture from King Kong, 25 feet long.
Can you describe that facility?
Yeah, but like, what's
and that
the
installation?
entrance? Yeah,
Well,
like you're driving down the road.
It's
Is it
not
grand?
one building. It's actually a host of buildings over in this part of Wellington, and I can't remember the name of the area of Wellington that it's in. And I know there's a bunch of Kiwis yelling at the podcast
That's
right
fine.
now.
That's what podcasts are for. It's the radio in your car.
But it felt very much like Industrial Light and Magic when I first got there in the late 90s, which is Industrial Light and Magic used to be both sides of Kerner Boulevard in San Rafael here. All the buildings just pointed to anyone, and there was a George's building.
You start with one, and as you expand, you just go, "Oh,
So
we'll lease that building."
There's
that
digital,
one.
that's
as
a shooting
opposed-
stage,
yep.
that's another shooting stage, that's a machine shop, there's camera department, that's the model shop, and it's the same thing over at Weta. There's a compound, a main compound, and all these buildings are nondescript.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, of course, you get in the cab, you say, "I'm going to Weta workshop," and they're like, "Oh, okay," and they know exactly where that is.
Yeah.
But it is just building after building after building, and it was so satisfying because I lament the loss of Industrial Light and Magic's model shop. Those folks, the men and women that I work with there, just they formed me in a significant way, and it felt like going home. The people at Weta could not have been nicer. You know, there are a lot of fans among them, and a lot who just know my skill base and know where I come from.
Yeah.
So it was every conversation was, as someone once said to me, started in the middle.
I assume you have a little bit different experience than a civilian coming through on a tour like that or on a visit like that.
Yeah.
But okay, so I think we should at some point spend a whole time
We should.
talking
and
about
I have
Weta.
pictures. I actually have some
Oh,
pictures.
yeah.
So let's do a podcast
And
about
if you give me the
Weta.
pictures, I'll put them up and we can watch them on the laptop and then we'll show them on screen.
But I also,
The future.
Yeah. We also, then Peter Jackson joined us.
What? That makes a lot of sense because the third Hobbit movie
Yeah.
is still coming out. So this is
And
interesting.
he turns out to be very similar to Guillermo and I in his prop collecting habits. And
Oh
we
my
went to
goodness.
one of his caves and spent
One
about
of his caves.
about 2.5 hours geeking out over all sorts of props and objects and things. He has an unfathomable collection of amazing stuff.
Oh my God,
was
Peter
really-
Jackson's
Yeah,
cave.
When you hit Peter Jackson's cave or Guillermo's house or what, like, does the same thing happen to you? That
Yeah.
happens to people when they
I
walk
have
in here,
no
where you
idea
just
what
kind of
to
be
do
like,
with myself.
make the face or
Yeah, and then I'm trying to have a conversation with someone while I'm just staring.
I mean that we literally. I mean, I watched that happen a dozen. I'm sure you've seen that happen hundreds of times at this point.
Absolutely.
And like it happens to
Everybody who
like,
walks in.
I assume that if it doesn't happen to something, either they're completely overwhelmed and just kind of frozen, which you've talked about before, or they're bad people and you shouldn't associate with them.
Hostile.
Yeah, it's not good.
Some people don't like being overwhelmed.
That's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm just saying.
Wellington, interesting because I've been there once.
Yeah.
And I was there in between the release of Two Towers and Return of the King.
Yeah.
And the city was actually decked out to celebrate the success of those movies and the cultural phenomenon. I think in the middle of one square, they had a giant, like 30-foot statue of an orc or, or a troll or something.
Yeah.
Was that city also
No.
in
But
full
everywhere
Hobbit
you
mode?
went in New Zealand, everybody, I can't say, it would be wrong to say that everyone laid their claim on Peter Jackson, but it's really clear that the entire country takes a great pride in having played such a central and important role in such a great series of movies. I mean, the Lord of the Rings films are just so important and so beautiful. And New Zealand, in all of its ecosystems, it's an astonishing country for the breadth of climates that it encompasses. And so just to continue on, and we'll cover the Weta visit in another podcast, but that night that I was finished, I spent about 7 hours at Weta, all told. And that after that, I took the cab back to the hotel, got in a car with Julia, and we drove north for about 3.5 hours, to the southern end of the biggest lake in the southern hemisphere, Lake Taupo. It's the big body of water right in the middle of the North Island of New Zealand.
Okay.
Sadly, we did not get to the South Island, which is apparently its own unbelievable thing.
Is it a completely different ecosystem, or is it?
It's very different. What everyone in New Zealand says, smiling slightly, is, "Oh, it's totally different." I don't know what exactly.
That's
what
where
that
the
means.
dinosaurs are, I guess.
Right,
I don't know.
guess. It's Isla Nubla.
Isla Nublar.
Yeah, there you go.
Isla Nublar.
At any rate, we didn't realize as we pulled into the hotel that we'd spent the last hour driving past Mount Doom in the dark.
Oh,
Because Tongariro Park is there, and the volcano
God.
that was Mount Doom, which is at this time of year covered with snow
Yeah.
and mostly lost in the clouds. So the next morning, we got up at this beautiful bed and breakfast, and the proprietor showed us a couple of great hikes, and we drove back down south to a couple of beautiful little hikes in Tongariro State Park, which is like looking up at this beautiful volcano. We went to this waterfall where part of The Hobbit was shot, and then we spent the rest of the day driving up north back to Auckland. Now, when you're driving up through the center of the country, you can take Route 1 is the big highway. It's the 2-lane road that heads all the way through New Zealand. But past Lake Taupo, you can actually take these little side roads all the way north. And that's what we did through farm country, all these little tiny hilly roads.
Sheep farms, cows.
Yeah. It was like everything you saw was so beautiful. You were like, oh, look. And at a certain point, we like passed this field of baby sheep playing with each other with their little furry fetlocks dark and like they look like they were wearing leg warmers, and Julia was like, now they're just showing off. Come on. Oh, and there's a sign that says Hobbiton this way, because that's where Hobbiton is.
Right.
We didn't even go. We didn't need to. It all looks like Hobbiton.
Oh.
Little wisps of smoke rising up from the countryside. I mean, just absolutely jaw-droppingly gorgeous.
So it's, but I mean, both Australia and New Zealand are kind of sparsely populated by our Northern California standards. I mean,
Yes.
the cities
very
obviously are
sparsely.
dense, but if you average it over the whole landmass,
Oh,
then-
no.
and
There's
New Zealand's
the same number of people in Australia as in California.
right? And New Zealand is like what, 16 million people or something. It's very small.
4.5 million people.
Right. I knew it was not many. Off by a factor of 4. Nice job, Will. Did you like? I find when I go someplace, when I go back to visit family in rural parts of the East Coast, which is still much more dense than that, I kind of have like almost space shock, like the crush of humanity coming back on me when I come to San Francisco, which isn't a super duper dense city by like Northeast standards. Did you have any kind of
The culture shock I had coming back was actually just, I really found the populace of New Zealand and Australia, both from a direct audience interaction point of view, from a meet and greet point of view. We have meet and greets after every performance, and then from the indirect of just walking through all the cities, because we went walking everywhere. We went to really good food. We had great. I'll tell you, the hamburger has been brought to a high art form in Australia, and I'm not being facetious. There's some really good food happening in all of the cities we went to.
describe the hamburger, the best one?
We had,
I'm really
we had
hungry, so I'm
so
interested.
many different amazing hamburgers. In one place, this food truck place in Auckland, they cut up beets and put them into the burger patty.
Okay, I'm feeling this so far.
It was phenomenal. It was like bloody, right? It looked
Yeah.
bloody. Oh, fantastic.
Beets are awesome and taste good.
Oh, they love beets down under,
Well-
and and in New Zealand they love beets significantly. They were in a lot of the food we were eating. The fries, I mean, I don't mean to say that it's all stadium food, because it's not.
Right.
But in general, the populace was incredibly happy. I mean, really, that was really notable. It was just good-natured countries.
Things were good.
Things were good.
what do most people do there?
It depends upon the city you're in. There's big cosmopolitan cities like Sydney and Brisbane, where it's like, they have They have all sorts of things that you'd have in a city. They
Normal
have
city
the arts, and
jobs,
they have, in Perth, it's a lot of mining. There's a lot of people making a lot of money in mining. Apparently, the economy in Perth is similar to what's going on in North Dakota, where, even mid-level jobs pay really well because it's hard to find people to fill those jobs. There's a lot of
You're talking about the fracking boom, right?
Yeah, the fracking boom in North Dakota. So coming back into the United States, where in general, walking down the street here in San Francisco, especially in my neighborhood in the Mission, there's a certain level of aggression. And I don't mean to say, I want to be careful about saying this. I don't mean to say Americans are aggressive. It's more just like there was a gentility to the populace of Australia and New Zealand that I found I don't find in my city right now. And that makes me kind of sad.
It's the thing that I found the last time I went to Canada is something as simple as when the crosswalk is counting down and it has 10 seconds left and somebody's turning right out of the street that it has the green light right now.
Yeah.
The Canadians stop, motion the car through the traffic light because they're like, well, pal, you're not going to get through if I start walking, even though I can totally make it.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Like
that.
just general common decency.
There was a lot of common decency. That being said, I can't even describe how much we missed our dogs.
Oh, I can't imagine for a month and a half.
Norm was a total mensch, an uber mensch, and Norman, going to say her name?
Yeah, sure.
On the radio?
Yeah.
Norman
the radio.
Donica stayed in our house with the dogs for a couple of the
I got
weeks.
the house sit.
We call her his special lady friend on the other show.
Special lady friend. And it's awesome having Norm stay at your house, by the way, because he takes awesome pictures of your dogs in your house.
I don't have dogs of my own. Well, time to take more photos.
Yeah. That was
so
really,
good.
that was like one of the best fringe benefits of having you stay there. It was great. So luckily we didn't have to board the dogs for more than 2 days for the whole time.
Oh, that's awesome. Because they turn into monsters if you board them for like 5. I mean, my
Super
dog
stressful for them.
Well,
Yeah.
and they like we take Chloe when she gets boarded to a place where it's like it's daycare basically.
Right.
So she runs around in a pack all
Yeah.
day, but 5 days of that and she comes back an absolute monster. So, she's called the wild. She's snarling, and it takes 2 or 3 days to get her back to normal again.
Right,
and
right.
kind of calm her back down. So,
we just lay down and let the dogs lick our faces for like an hour.
I'm sure they were thrilled to see
Oh my
you.
God. They're practically, how Huxley, my bigger dog, when he gets excited, he kind of squirms from side to side. We were like joking, he's going to hurt his back, like bending with glee. And actually, when I sat down in our foyer to receive him and be like, oh, come here and lick my face, he has all sorts of different excited sounds. He can be like, "Oh, oh, oh, oh," when he sees people he particularly loves. But when we came home after 5 weeks, he was like, oh, it was such I've never heard the sound. It was like, oh God, why did you go away for so long?
Do they get mopey? Like my dad's dog when he
I don't know.
Oh,
they get
they got mopey.
They got
They're
mopey?
mopey at least for a couple days.
like just
Very
laying by the
mopey,
door
yep.
waiting.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's so sad. The mopey dog is the saddest dog of all.
I'll tell you about food also in Australia, New Zealand. Here's a place that we went to in where was it? In Auckland. Okay.
Okay.
This is Cafe Hanoi.
Okay.
Phenomenal Vietnamese food. Like, I think out of 31 days, we had 5 meals that weren't Asian food. The thing is, Asia is a 3-hour flight,
Right.
Yeah.
right? To Bali or Vietnam.
It's like going to Vegas here.
Right. It is
Or
just
Hawaii, I guess.
everyone goes all the time. And the food, the Asian food, is just of an order we just don't get here. Things were just unique and different. We discovered this. We had this dish we hadn't had before. It's Vietnamese called banh siu, which is like it's like a pancake, a battered pancake with pork and shrimp and cabbage, and it's fantastic. Really, really delicious. We came home, we made it.
Oh,
We
really?
made some. Yeah.
Like look
yeah.
at recipes.
We
And,
found a recipe, and it's a little like okonomiyaki, except with no egg. There's no egg in the batter, so it cooks
so
totally.
it's just like flour and water and cornstarch.
I think so, and I can't remember the actual ingredients because Julia mixed that part
Yeah.
up. But what you do after you make this pancake with mung beans and shrimp and pork and some seasoning is you then take a thing of lettuce. A leaf of lettuce, and you put the bit of the pancake on there with some mint, and you dip it in this sweet sauce and eat it. Oh, it's phenomenal!
Oh, man,
and
that
it was
sounds
like
good.
every Asian meal we had was like introducing us to a new type of cuisine.
It's that's fascinating. That like my favorite thing about going outside the country is food because it's a completely different experience everywhere you go.
Yeah, and really also not realizing like, oh right, Australia's sitting right there under the Philippines and all of Asia, so it's going to have some really different takes.
Did you have?
We had
food
one
tips?
dish that what's that?
Oh no, go ahead.
We had one dish that totally floored us, which was Korean fried cauliflower, which was like,
I like all of those things.
yeah, which was like, how do I describe this? Picture a tempura style fried cauliflower chunks in a not a heavy batter, but a very well covered batter, drowning in a beautiful, not too sweet sauce.
Are there air pockets
And yet,
inside?
no, not
Okay,
much.
okay.
And yet still crispy in the sauce.
Ooh.
Oh, I didn't even realize I was eating a vegetable.
Huh.
And then we ordered a second one. We're like, we have to get this again because this crap is off the hook.
I didn't think about it enough the first go round.
No,
So let's
exactly.
pay attention.
We did a
this time.
bunch of that.
Did you make a list of all the restaurants? I know you got business cards. And
I think Julia has a more comprehensive list. I will.
Oh, yeah.
I have some photos of a couple of places we ate that were particularly notable.
You know what I've started doing over the last few years is I add it only works if there's Yelp, but I just bookmark stuff in Yelp that's good.
Yeah.
So anything that I've been to, like if I'm in a city that I've been to before and I've had good meals, I can just go hit, hey, here's what's near in the bookmarks, and you get a list of like 5 awesome things.
Yeah. And thanks to the California legislature, you can no longer be sued for a bad Yelp review.
thank goodness.
Thank goodness we passed a law to
Back on
say
Yelp
exactly
common
what
sense.
everyone already knew.
Jeez.
Did you have the roadies on, since you went on the buses and had that, did you, like when you were on the US tour, you kind of asked the guys who were on the crew setting up and taking down, helping you guys do the show every night, and they all knew like awesome places to eat around the country?
No, in this case, most of us were brand new. And Julia's got the nose for that. She goes to different food blog sites and she's got the nose and goes and finds the good stuff every
she
single
found
time.
the Southern Hemisphere equivalent of Chowhound or whatever.
We did have one. We crossed over with 2 other tours. We were in the same city one night as the Bob Dylan tour. He was touring Australia, New Zealand. And on another night with the Queen tour. Brian May was touring with Adam Lambert. And on the Dylan tour, they were incredibly gracious. Our tour manager and Dylan's tour manager know each other, so they invited us over to see the show.
Oh, that's awesome.
I brought Thing 1 and Thing 2, who were totally blown away. But more than that, they were like, you got to come eat with us because our caterer is unbelievable. And they found them in New Zealand. So when we went to Auckland, we made sure to hire the same caterer.
Oh, nice.
The food was fantastic. That is one thing that the touring companies really do also strive for is excellent catering.
I mean, I have to imagine that makes it like if you're doing this for 30 days in a row, 26 to 30 days, like eating bad food is the most demoralizing thing in the world, and it'll get
very
everybody in a pissy
inexpensive
mode.
morale.
Food, yeah,
when you consider the overall thing. So
and not just for you, but for everybody on the team.
Exactly.
Because a lot of people.
Exactly. I actually got a nice at the end when we saw the Queen show. The tour promoter Paul Dainty, who is the co-promoted the tour with our tour promoter Magic Space down in Australia. Paul brought me back into his office at the end of the Queen show and introduced me to Brian May, which was totally amazing. And they had, excuse me. Queen had just spent 3 months touring. The New Zealand show was their last show before going home. And he said, he said, when is your next tour? And I said, December. And he said, how many cities? And I said, 26 cities in 31 days. And he said, oh, man, we don't do that. My hat is off to you. And I thought, I got a tip of the hat for some rigorous touring from Brian May. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I don't think there's a better place to leave it than that.
No, I think so. Oh, wait, I want to mention, I read a crap ton of books while I was on the trip. And a bunch of great ones.
Can we do a podcast about it?
We can totally do a podcast about it, but I just want to tell everyone right now after this podcast, go read The Martian.
Dude, I told you to do that 6 months ago. It's really good.
It floored me how much I loved it. I read it in one plane flight.
It is a super fast read, and I was up until 4 o'clock in the morning finishing it after starting it at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I'm gonna read it again. Oh, here's what I also got to see. I saw Chris Hadfield. He happened to be at my hotel.
Way to bury all the leads.
And you met Elvis after that, right? Jesus.
And Hadfield said, you got to listen to it. Hadfield's wife, sorry, Helena, said you have to listen to it. The reading of it,
The audiobook.
the audiobook is fantastic apparently. So I'm going to download it and listen to it.
Okay. I
I don't know. It might be the author, but apparently it's because it's all first person.
Yeah.
Right? It's all first person narrative. And
That's a good, and a lot of people, that's the easy way to get into a book.
It's totally the easy way to get into a book. And look, there are some books that I think are better listening to them. Hitchens' God is Not Good.
Neil
So
Stephenson's
good
An Anthem.
listening to him. Oh,
Because they do the chants, and you could like my idea of what the chants were in that, and what the chants were as intended, completely different.
yeah.
It's really good.
And that's great. I listened to American Gods with a full cast recording.
Yeah, everybody should read American Gods. American Gods is 99 cents on Kindle pretty much all the time now on Amazon.
Go get it. It's
just
great.
go get it and read it if you know. But we should do it.
But The Martian.
The Martian. The Martian's the book I want to say just killed me and was so amazing.
The setup, the first chapter, maybe chapter and a half of that is so. It is an unbelievable first chapter of a book, and
You have to read it.
I'll read it.
so that we can do a cast on it, because the thing about it is everything in it is technologically feasible now.
It has been for 10, 15 years.
And what that does is there are no leaps of like, and then I grabbed the hollow spoon laser beam and fixed. No,
It's not
This
even. He doesn't cheat, or at least I didn't see any place he cheated.
there's no cheating.
Did Hadfield agree?
He totally agreed. He was like,
that
I
makes me
want to
feel so
know
good.
who that guy spoke to at NASA because he clearly knows his stuff in a deep, deep way. Hadfield wrote one of the blurbs on the back.
Well, and he clearly, like, from talking to him about, because when we were talking to him about eating asparagus in space,
Yeah.
he was like, well, one of the things we have to figure out is how to do food in zero G, because you can't cook food and we can't do enough prepackaged foods. We got to, something's got to give, and we got to figure that out. So
There was this funny moment. So the way somebody texted me and said, you know that Hadfield's in Sydney, and I think he might even be at your hotel. And whenever that usually gets said, it's not the case.
Right.
But I texted him because text still works even internationally. And I was like, are you in my hotel? I'm in room 1901. And I sent it. My phone rang. And I practically
Like the room
jumped.
phone?
Yeah.
Nice.
And he was like, I'm downstairs.
That's amazing. That's so good. Okay. Now hold on. I'm gonna say this again.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, well, I think that'll just about do it for us this week.
Would anyone like a cupcake?
Oh no, that's just mean. They are such good cupcakes. We'll be back next week with another edition of Still Untitled. It might be a book cast.
It might be a book cast. It might be another
Guardians of the Galaxy.
spoiler cast. We should totally do that.
It could be Australia. I kind of want to go see it again before we talk about it. So
Well, you want to do that tonight? I'm sure my kids would be willing.
we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.